in your body. Okay, so here we go. Let's take a couple of minutes to settle and to breathe. You can always choose between 3 basic postures for doing this opening, settling, and orienting part of the practice. Standing is a good option if you've been sitting all day. Lying down might also be a good option if you've been sitting all day. Energetically, standing up or lying down is going to have a different effect. So you can also kind of see energetically how you might facilitate relative balance where you're pretty relaxed, but also alert. So standing is one option. You can stand with your feet right under your hips or a little wider, and you might be standing still, or you might be swaying or bouncing a little bit. Good. If you're lying down, you could have your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. Maybe be swaying your knees a little bit side to side, maybe stretching your arms out. And then if you're sitting, if you would be sure that even while you're sitting, you're able to move your pelvis. And certainly if you're standing or lying down, you can also just see that movement is possible in your pelvis. And if it's not, if you're sitting and you don't have access to movement in your pelvis, try shifting your position until you do. Sometimes just by sitting up on something like a block or a blanket can help. Sometimes you have to lay down or stand up so that you can get your pelvis moving. So let's just focus on that for the next minute or so. Focus on movement in the pelvis. And notice I'm not telling you how to move it. I'm just asking you to move it. So you'll find out how it can move just by asking it to. And you might make the movement a little bit bigger. So if you're moving side to side, you might go further to one side and further to the other side. If you're going front to back, further forward, further back. And probably there at the end of the movement, you'll get a little resistance, maybe a lot. You might just feel the brakes, or you might feel some discomfort. So we're just kind of mapping and starting to note what is here with us. Good, then see if you can bring your pelvis back to relative stillness. If you were moving forward and backward, see if you can find the middle, side to side, the middle. Good, let's amplify the breath a little bit. So turn the sound of your breath up a little louder so you can hear it as you breathe in through your nose. And as you breathe back out through your nose to the best of your ability. If your nose is clogged, you can take a moment to clear it. If it's not possible, you can always also breathe through your mouth. Good. So not only will we amplify the sound of the breath, but let's exaggerate the feeling of the breath. So feel where your lungs spread and press against your ribs, where your diaphragm pulls and presses against your belly. Maybe even again at the end of that range of movement, there's a little discomfort as you're stretched out. And then on the exhale, do the reverse. So the lungs collapse, the ribs pull together, the diaphragm comes up, the belly comes back, and you can exaggerate a little that feeling. And then just pause for a moment at the end of each extreme so you can feel the impression of a full, long, exaggerated inhale. We'll do just a couple more together. And then be stretched out and full in your chest, maybe even in your belly. Maybe you even feel some of it in your pelvis. And then exhale to empty. Last time, big full inhale, stretch the rib cage all the way around the back of the rib cage too, in the low ribs. And then exhale. Good. As you exhale, feel some heaviness in your arms. And then as you inhale, get some energy moving through them. Stretch your fingers out and turn your palms to face forward. If you're lying down, the palms can turn to face upward. And then with your next inhale, stretch your elbows and reach them away from your body until you just get to the end of the natural movement of breath and shoulders. And then pause and then exhale. Relax the stretch of your fingers, relax your elbows, let your arms just kind of melt back down to your side. Good, let's do it 2 more times. See if you can coordinate the energy moving through your arms with the inhalation moving through. And once you get a sense of what you might be doing, you can even close your eyes so you can be guided more by the length of your own breath, by the fluidity of your own movement, rather than by, mimicking what you might be seeing someone else do on the screen. Good, let's come up to the top of the next inhalation and pause for a moment or two when you get there. And then when you come down to the exhale, give the arms a good shake out. And then let's roll the shoulders around. Now is when, if you're reclining, you'll want to come over to seated or to a standing position so you have access to the back of the body. If you're on the floor is going to limit your access there. So we'll come to sitting or standing so that we can roll the shoulders and draw the elbows back behind the waist. And the arms can be quite relaxed until the elbows come back behind the waist. And then the arms can actually do a little work to kind of pull the shoulder blades together. Let's do that. 3, 2, 1 more time, and then swing the arms forward. And try to swing the arms forward without broadening across the shoulder blades. So if you did, just once more, drop the arms down, roll the shoulders back, bring the elbows back behind the waist, and then swing them forward without letting the shoulder blades move. Interweave the fingers, clasp them together in front of you, and then flip the palms over and get a good stretch for your fingers. So you can push a little bit through one wrist and then the other. Point the thumbs down, swing the elbows up. It can relax your arms, your elbows wide, and your hands behind your head if that's better for your shoulders and for your wrists. Otherwise, we can keep the elbows extended and the palms pressing up and just bend a little over to one side and then inhale, push back up to center. Bend a little to the other side. Inhale, push up to center. And then let's all have the hands cradle the base of the skull and lean the head into the hands and look up. And bring your breath back to the foreground. And let it help to soothe, to smooth out any little jitters or pulls or balls of energy or tension through your shoulders or your fingers or wherever you're finding them. One more time. Inhale, look up. Good. Exhale, start to use the strength of the hands to pull the head back to center. Point the elbows forward and then down. Let the weight of the arms help to hold the head in this tucked position. Let's even slightly lift the pubic bones towards the navel and tuck the chin in towards the chest. So we're really rounding the back, and then relax your arms. Pick your shoulders back up towards your ears. Draw your elbows back behind your waist again and look up. And by look up, I just meant look forward. So we were looking down. Let's just sweep the gaze to look forward. And then give your pelvis a chance to move again. So that was a while with the pelvis steady. So let's just shift a little bit. If you're seated, if you would stand And we'll do a little bit for the feet and then for the whole body. And then we'll do some of our standing postures. So if you would stand facing the short side of your mat and just shift 1 foot forward or 1 foot backward rather, and then back forward. And do this in a way that gets a little energy moving through your body. Really feel the power to push off the back foot to propel yourself forward, but then catch yourself. So you're not going past your front foot, you might at first, until you find just the right amount of force to hold yourself back so that ultimately maybe you can float. Pause before stepping that back foot beside the front. So don't make too big of a deal out of it. It's just like slow-mo on the way forward. Push and then slow-mo and step down. So I hope you're starting to feel some awakening in your Achilles, the back of your ankle, maybe in your big toe joint. That's where I'm feeling some awakening. Our little feet get all cold and tied up in our boots with this weather, so getting some movement through the feet will be much appreciated. Okay, and then we'll stand on both feet near the front of the mat and have your blocks or your chair or your wall, whatever would be helpful for kind of meeting you halfway to the floor. If you're short and or flexible, the floor itself might be enough support. If you're tall or less flexible or a little stiff, then having the blocks or chair or the wall will be really helpful for this next full body movement. Good. So find your base pose, your standing posture where you feel very confident and steady. So this might not be how you usually stand. There might be a little exaggerated ta-da. This is called Tadasana, the mountain pose. So give it a little ta-da, kind of bring a little bit more energy through your whole body. Lift through the crown of your head. Lift through the crown of your head, but see if you can start to feel that lift coming in the arches of your feet. Let's actually lift all 10 toes and spread them wide. Notice how that activates not just the arches of the feet, but energy all the way up through the legs. Good, as long as you're able to keep that awareness through the legs, you can lightly touch the toes down. Like we did before, let's spread the fingers and turn the palms to face forward, and then lift the elbows up. Maybe they come higher than the shoulders. Maybe they stop in cactus position, just about at shoulder height. You've got your shoulders to contend with, so please listen to what they say, and that might be a more modest movement. It might be a more frequent movement. So I might ask you to stay, or I might stay for a while, and your body might prefer, instead of staying, to repeat the lift and release and lift and release. Good, let's take the side bend in one direction and then the other direction. And then we'll bring our weight more back to our heels. We'll lift our pelvis up and over the tops of our legs. I like to bring the hands to the fronts of the thighs on the way into forward bend and stop at the L shape, where there's about a 90-degree angle between the hips and the torso, or the legs and the torso. And then give a little or maybe a generous bend to your knees so you can really get your tail up in the air. Let's lift tail up into the air and then also look forward. So we're really encouraging the length of the front of the body. And then with as much bend as you need in the knees to keep your tail lifted, go ahead and let your heart sink lower than your hips. Hands can slide down your legs. They can find your blocks or your chair or the floor. Let your head sink lower than your hips, lower than your heart. And then let's put some weight into the hands. Push the floor away, lift the head and shoulders, and look up again. And let's just do that a couple of times as you sort of smooth out and feel through the levers, the tension and strength in the whole back of the body. So you might be bending and straightening your legs. You might be lifting and dropping your gaze, coming from this kind of rounded back at the end of the forward fold to a more elongated spine up in the L shape. Okay, next time you come with ribs close to the thighs, let's pause there. Bring all of the weight back into the feet, and even more than that, bring the weight back into the heels. And drop the hips any amount down lower, so the thighs might even come parallel or towards parallel to the floor. And then let's bring the shoulders, relax your arms. You can release them from the block or the chair. Bring your shoulders towards your ears and around your back, just like we did earlier. Bring your elbows back behind your waist and bring your shoulder blades together. Good, notice how your breastbone is lifted by the strength of your shoulder blades coming together. And maybe just lift your gaze. And then lift your hips, drop your head and your heart back down. From here, we'll come all the way up to standing. Keep your gaze low as you lift your hips and lift your shoulders. Energetically, you might have enough lift by the time you get there. You might like more upward moving energy, and you could lift your arms and or even your gaze before coming back to center. Good, one more time. Reach through the fingers, lift the arms up. Take your side bend in one direction and then the other. Good, keep the spine long as you shift your weight back and fold over your legs and then bend your knees to lift your tail high. Bring your hands to the floor or to your blocks or to your chair and put a little weight in them. Press the floor away, lift your head and look forward. And then release your ribs back down towards your thighs with as much ease as you can to your head and neck. Drop your hips down. Roll your shoulders back and around. Could be this position here with the elbows alongside the waist and then just behind the waist. Or you may remember cactus position or arms alongside the ears. Those are other options for chair pose. Good, release back down, hips lift up, head and shoulders drop down. Let's again take hands into a position under the shoulders where they can hold some weight. So that could be on the chair, fingers around the edges of the block, or palms pressing into the mat. You have a better sense now probably of how close the floor feels like it is and how supportive it might be. We're gonna step one foot back, and then the other. If you're at the mat, you can always come down to your knees for a more modest weight bearing in the hands. And then we'll draw the hips back so the shoulders stretch out. So from a plank or a supported plank to a downward facing dog, or even with the knees down, could be a puppy dog. And then shift back and forth a few times. More weight forward into the hands, and then back to the feet as the hips move forward and backward. And if you're not finding the right level of intensity, you can try slowing down or speeding up. One or two more times. Shifting weight forward and backward, getting some good fluid moving through the joints, soles and the wrists, the hips and the shoulders. Let's pause in the downward facing position. Smooth out a little bit some of the tangles in the back of the body. Let your breath touch those areas. Bring some freshness and some brightness when you inhale. Take some tension. Bring some length and some ease as you exhale. Good. Let's look forward. Start to shift your shoulders forward. And you can either, we're going to come back to the front of the mat. You can either bring one knee down and then the other. You can step one foot forward and then the other. Or you can walk both feet forward. Small steps, nice and wide, until you come to the front of the mat. And then bring yourself all the way up to standing. You know, yoga is has the potential to be this incredibly therapeutic and balancing practice. But in order to help us to find balance, we need to know where we're starting. So your ability to listen to tune into your body's energy and anatomy and experience and temperature, all of these different factors affect what is the best or the balancing version of each of these postures in any given practice. So I fully expect and hope that every single one of us doing this same sequence together today actually looks quite different. So let's do a few more. First, with our opening sun salutes, we'll stand in our tada mountain pose. We'll inhale and we'll lift the arches of the feet. We'll stretch the fingers from the palm. And then we'll take the elbows out and up. Let's repeat our side bend, integrating just the perfect position of the arms up high at the level of the head or even down low. And then long in the spine, we'll kind of pour the spine over the tops of the legs. Maybe the legs are warming up a little bit and you don't need as deep a bend in the knees. Maybe you want to bend the knees more deeply so that you feel more confident and more comfortable. Lift the head and shoulders halfway. First little bit of weight in the hands and then back and down into your chair pose. Good. Lift your breastbone as you bring your shoulder blades together. Find the position of the arms or movement of the arms that helps you to evoke that strength in the shoulder blades. And then fold forward again. Let's get some weight in the hands. Whatever foot you step back first last time, take the opposite foot first. So maybe it was the right foot that went first last time, so maybe it's the left foot this time. And then bring the other to join it. And then we'll go back and forth a couple of times from our plank variation, putting a little more weight in our hands, to our dog variation. Weight a little more evenly distributed between all four limbs. See if you can amplify your breath so that you can hear it. Okay, back to your downward facing dog. Bring your feet a bit closer together. Bend the right knee and start to drag the toes of the right foot forward and lift the back of your heart as you go. See if you can then come up high on the ball of the left foot and then flex the right foot and kick the heel forward. This is a tricky one. This is one of the trickiest transitions in our primary or sun salute sequence. So please just continue to find the right amount of support. And let's repeat that movement a couple of times. So we'll step the right foot back. The feet close together. We'll bend the left knee. Turn over onto the toenail. Start to drag that foot forward. Lift high onto the ball of the right foot. Lift the back of the heart. So you're making more space for that knee as it comes forward, and then flex your foot, take it through, and step down. Good, easy breathing. And maybe here is where you decide, okay, now I want the blocks, or now I want the chair to give me a little more space to swing that leg through. Step back. Okay, one more time. Bend the right knee, turn to the toenails, drag them forward, flex your foot high up onto the ball of the left foot, take it forward. Good, now let's come up a little higher. So if you're on the floor, come up to the blocks. If you're on the blocks, maybe come up to the thigh. If you're already on the chair or the thigh, maybe you use your hands against a wall. And let's make sure we're good and steady. So use your hands to help give yourself another point of balance. Good, take your feet now back to at least hip distance apart. You could even go wider to find steadiness. And then a couple of times with this front knee bent, as long as there's no pain in your knee, you can straighten it if there is. See if it's possible to bring the back heel to the mat. And then again, just as we did when we started out with kind of propelling ourselves forward and catching or slowing down the force, we'll pick that heel up and set it back down. Once, twice. Good. Third time, you decide where to steady. Some of us will feel more steady with the heel grounded. Others will prefer to have it lifted. Maybe there could even be a blanket or a pillow that it rests on, but it might be more comfortable if it's lifted. And then let's make sure our pelvis is driving straight forward, not to the left. So come back to checking on what's possible in your pelvis. Can you drive it from side to side? Drive it straight forward. And then set your pelvis firmly onto your legs. And we'll encourage that upward moving force through the legs, starting with the arches of the feet, through the spine. Let's lift the heart. Use the position of the arms, that's helpful. Could be, as we've done, with elbows back behind the waist. Could be cactus position. Could be arms up overhead. Let's pause at an interesting place along the way and take a full breath. Release your arms down. Good, release your heart back towards the more neutral position, not that big open forward fold. And bring your hands back down to your blocks and put a little weight into them. Could also be the chair or the floor. Good, let's step the left foot forward. Round it next to the right. Good, take a moment to let the back of the body smooth out. Step the right foot back. Good, maybe come up a little higher. Find a little more space in that left hip now. A little more steadiness as you ground and lift the back heel. These postures we can think of as conversation starters. Let's see how it feels in our body, what it evokes in our body. Let's see where we might be able to fix the legs then, to use them as the support for the movement of the pelvis. Good, so the pelvis should be able to move. If you're at the end of your range of movement, you'll be much less stable than if you have some options. So Here, you might even fine tune a little bit more. You know, you might take that back foot forward or take it out a little wider. And then we'll drive the pelvis again towards the short side of the mat. Set the pelvis onto the legs. Lift from the arches of the feet all the way through the spine, and then start to lift the heart up. Good, feel the strength of those shoulder blades coming together to lift the heart. And again, use the arms to the degree that they can help you to feel the strength in the shoulders. And freedom and support for the heart. And then pause somewhere interesting along the way and your breath again to the foreground. I'm going to exhale, release your heart. Let your hands find something solid. Start to bring the right foot forward. Maybe slowly. You can enjoy feeling the balance in the left foot. And then let's have the blocks just in front of us. Take the feet wider. Draw the hips back again so weight comes towards the heels. And maybe let the head or the forearms find and sink in a little bit to the support of the floor, the blocks, the chair, whatever you have available. Here too, you might add more movement or less. You might turn the intensity up a little bit or down a little bit, depending on what you're finding and what you're learning. Let's have breath back up to the foreground, amplified. And then hands back under the shoulders. And shoulder blades strongly on the back of the body. So bend your knees if you need a little room to be able to really get the heart and the shoulder blades around. We'll do just a little lean over onto the left side and take the weight out of the right hand. Let that right shoulder roll around a couple of times. And if you've been practicing with me, you know that after the relaxed arm rolls around at the shoulder, we could consider the bent elbow with the fingertips on the shoulder. Or if you want more intensity, it could be a straight arm, rotating forward, up, back, and around. And the gaze can gently follow. The pelvis is mostly fixed, although if you find that you enjoy a continuation of this rotation down into the pelvis, you can go ahead and turn your pelvis a bit to the right as well. You can see some of us will enjoy keeping the pelvis more fixed. That could be helpful if the back's a bit tender. Good, one more time, pause somewhere interesting around this rotation and give yourself time to nourish whatever part of your body is awakened here with a full breath cycle. And then let's come back to balance, both hands under the shoulders, both hips, driving weight down into their legs. And then we'll take our little shift over onto the right hand and free the left. Let that shoulder rotate around with a relaxed arm. So a lot of us have trickiness in our shoulders that arises from the strength of the arms overpowering the strength of the shoulders. So with this kind of movement where the arm is relaxed and the shoulder girdle itself is doing things, we give the shoulder a chance to build, to develop some strength so it can match the strength of the arm and maintain the integrity of the joint. So I really want to encourage you to be conservative about adding movement in the arm because it might inadvertently take the potential for balance away from the shoulder muscles. But as long as you're still feeling that awakening in your upper back, around your shoulder blade, across your chest, across your collarbone, then find just the right amount of intensity for your mind to feel very activated and engaged by your movement. Let's pause somewhere along the way again. Give your breath a chance to fill in some of this space. And release back to the neutral position. And heel to walk the feet back in a bit closer. Let's take the blocks, if you're using the blocks, or the hands, if your hands are on the floor, back beside the feet. If you're using the chair, step the feet so they're just right underneath the seat of the chair. You can still be holding on to the seat. We're going to take the right leg back again. This time we're going to bring the right knee down and turn the toenails to the top, or the tops of the toenails down towards the mat. And if you find that the hardness of your mat or your floor is a bit too much for your knee or your shin, you can fold your mat up or add a blanket. And then have just the right amount of weight in your hands, not too much, but use the hands to hold some of your weight and see how well you're able to shift your pelvis back and forth while you've got your legs split like this. So it's quite different than doing it with the legs moving together. So again, let it be a conversation starter. And just shifting back and forth a couple of times. Letting the back of the left leg stretch as the hips come back. You can exaggerate that if it feels reasonable by lifting the toes of the left foot and pulling the toenails towards the shin, straightening the knee maybe. And then stretching the front of the right thigh as the pelvis comes forward. And again, you can exaggerate that to the degree that it feels reasonable. We're more focused on the movement back and forth for now, though, than staying for too long, especially around a place where there's a lot of sensation. Okay, we're going to switch legs. So use the weight in your hands to help. Bring the right foot forward and let the pelvis shift back and forth. Probably a little bit of a different experience on this side. See if you can remember to control the turn of the pelvis. We've been working on that in our in-person classes too. So you're driving the hips. Sometimes I like the image of headlights on the hip bones. And if you can imagine those headlights pointed straight forward. So notice if, would you be slightly turned to the left? Would you be straight ahead? Would you be turned to the right? See if you can drive your hips straight forward and change the position of your legs to make that possible. You'll get a lot more authentic, maybe not as much, but a lot more honest sort of movement out of the muscles of the legs when they're not being assisted by the muscles that control the rotation of the pelvis. Okay, we're going to bring the right leg back now, and let's pause for a moment with both knees back. Let's take the arms a bit further forward. And again, you could be using the blocks or not. You can see what works for you. You could have your hands on the seat of the chair if you're using the chair, or you could bring them down to the blocks. We're going to draw the pelvis back and let the armpits stretch out a bit here. Maybe even find a place to rest your forehead. You can sink into this a bit if you like. You can also pulse in and out by lifting the backs of the shoulders and then dropping them back down a couple of times. Okay, next time you catch an inhalation, lifting the shoulders up. Go ahead and slide the hands back in closer so the shoulders are more like right above or right behind the wrist. Good, let's take the right foot and drag it forward again. Flip the toes so they point forward and then kick the heel in between the hands. Good, so this isn't a very big lunge. The front knee is just about over the front ankle. And we're gonna take our weight from both hands over into just the left hand so the right one is free. And then we'll make sure our pelvis is turned, our headlights to the short side of the mat, and we'll rotate this right shoulder back and around. Again, you can add the variation with your arm. That is elbow bent and fingertips to the shoulder or straight arm. Good, one version of this posture that I quite like is to use the hand to actually just hold the back of the head. So if you're looking for an option to stay in for a breath or two, to stay in this more open position, you might slide your hand from your shoulder back behind the base of your skull. Give yourself a moment or two. One more level of intensity is available if you like. That is with the toes tucked under, lifting the back knee. So this is a standing posture rather than a kneeling one. So you can see if that's helpful for you. Might be helpful in making it clear that the kneeling version is the better one. So we're turning towards the bent knee. It's really twisty pose. Let's release back to the neutral position, downward facing. You can take a moment to step the right foot back into symmetry, maybe even back all the way to puppy dog or to downward facing dog. And then again, we'll start from the knees, roughly in the tabletop position. We'll drag the toes of the left foot forward and then flip the foot under, or flip the foot forward, the toes forward, and kick the heel through to the space between the hands. Good, find your lunge that's very well supported. So not hanging in the back hip, not driving forward over the knee or the toes of the front foot, but well positioned between both legs. And then we'll take our little lean over into the right hand, although less and less of your weight should be going down. You can think of more and more of your energy actually coming up. So up from the arch of the front foot, up from the pelvic floor, up behind the heart, and then you've got some wind that you can sail on. You can let the shoulders start to rotate and move. Maybe the arm rotates with it. Good. Maybe your gaze is circling around. Maybe you're amplifying your breath again so you can hear it. Maybe you're directing it to the places in your body that are more awake, more alert now. Okay, let's find a place to pause. Come back to downward facing. This time, let's step the left foot back and have the knee join the right. Let's move the blocks off to the side. Come to the floor if you're on the chair. And let's come forward and down into a prone position. You might keep your butt up in the air at first. You might bend your elbows as your heart comes down to the space between your hands. Maybe look forward. This posture is called Anankatasana. It's knees, chest, and chin. Then we'll slide the heart forward and bring the belly to the mat. See if you can keep the heart moving forward, keep the shoulders moving back, the elbows moving back. Look up. Then release the forehead back down. Slide your hands underneath your forehead. Stack them one on top of the other with the elbows wide. And either let your legs relax, let your heels drop away from each other, or if this position brings some agitation in your lower back, you might find you can relieve it by lifting your feet and just letting them gently sway or move from side to side. Feel your belly move against the floor as you breathe. Let your hips, your high beams, your headlights, not only point towards the floor, but even slightly back towards your feet. Good. Try to keep the back of your waist very long. And then we'll slide the hands out from under the head and bring them back alongside the hips. Now, you can always, and I encourage you to come back to the hands stacked position or the feet kind of moving position if and when you need to rest your back. Otherwise, we'll work on continuing to strengthen the upper back and shoulders without using so much the arms. So especially if you've been shoveling, this should be a bit of relief. We'll let the arms be awake, but relatively relaxed. We'll draw the collarbones broad and the shoulder blades together to lift the heart and then release. Good, we'll do it twice more. I had the great privilege of spending time with a newborn this week. And if you've been around a newborn, you probably know that tummy time is very important to build the strength of their back, to strengthen their neck so that they can sit and eventually crawl and then walk. So same for us, right? So here's our tummy time. Feel, your head kind of bobbling as well. Good, let's relax, turn the head to one side. And then to the other. And then let's do one more round. For this one, you can bring the hands wherever you like. I'll suggest maybe cactus position or even with the elbows bent and the hands just lightly touching the back of the skull. And we'll try to keep the legs, like the arms, awake, but not working real hard. The work is really concentrated in the upper back and shoulders. We'll lift up and release, lift up, and then release. One more time, lift up, and then release. Open the arms out, maybe T position. And to one side, big breath. And then to the other. Okay, hands back in close, right beside your chest. Turn your back to level, bring your elbows towards the ceiling. Grip with your fingers and then push the floor away and lift yourself up. Good, start to move your hips back. We're going to ultimately move on to our backs. And so you can see if you'd like to spend a few cycles of breath in a child's pose, if your hips and knees and shoulders and like that. If not, you can roll right over onto your back and do sort of an upward facing child's pose with the knees pulled in towards the chest. If you've run out of space on the length of your mat, you can shift yourself so that once you do roll onto your back, you have room to stretch your legs out long. And here's where I'd love for you to have that foam block or small firm pillow, and we'll just have it set off to the side. We'll use it here shortly. Okay, so if you come onto your back with your head and your shoulders and your hips even on the floor. And if you have a lot of tension in your neck and your shoulders and your chin is kind of jutting towards the ceiling, or you feel the back of your head kind of being pulled towards your shoulders, you might like to have a folded blanket behind your head so that it's a little easier to drop the weight of your head down towards the base of your skull. So if you can do that without the blanket, then please do. We'll have the knees bent and the feet flat on the floor. And it's always going to be an option for you to keep your knees bent or to bend your knees if you need to change the intensity for your hips or for your lower back. The straight legs will be a little bit more intense for your lower back. And so if you want less intensity, you can come to bent knees. So here's what we'll do first. Let's practice our bridge pose. So wake our hamstrings up. Not that we haven't been working with them already a bit in our standing postures, but let's use this strength in the upper back. So the arms will be in close. We'll bring the shoulder blades together to start to lift the heart off the floor. And then we'll push the feet down into the floor and lift the hips up. Feel the hamstrings, the backs of the thighs, lifting the thighs up. And then releasing the hips back down. Good, one more time, come up to that position where the heart is lifted, the shoulder blades are lifting it, the hips are lifted, the thighs are lifting as the hamstrings move up into the body. And then we release back down. Okay, so that's going to be one option for activating the hamstrings. Another option is going to be with the block down at the foot of your mat. So if you just take the block in between your feet and then stretch legs down. And you can do this one with your feet in closer and your knees still bent. So here, with the feet lifted onto the block and the hips lifting up, or out here with the legs straight, the heels resting on the block, and then the hips lifting up. So a different load for the hamstrings, different activation level. The hips don't go very far though, right? So hips lift up and then come back down. And then we're going to work the hamstrings both through contraction and extension. We'll take the block between the feet again, lift the legs up, transfer the block from the feet to the hands, and then you can, again, bend your knees as you need. We'll set the legs back down and stretch the arms overhead. Okay, so we've got a little sequence here. Remember, bent knees along the way is the way to change the intensity level as you need. So block is between the hands, which are overhead. Then we'll transfer block from the hands. You could also do from the hands to the knees if that's a better halfway point. Then we'll lower the legs down, drop the block, set the heels on top of the block, and try lifting the hips up. Hips down, block between the feet, feet lift up, transfer to the hands. Good. I can see blocks flying up on my screen. And then block between the hands as they extend back. Now, this really is quite a big force, these straight legs moving up and down on your back. So if this movement is really new to you, I'd recommend that you do it with bent knees, and I'll demonstrate that for you here. Take the block from the hands and bring it forward to the knees. We can keep the block in between the knees here and set the feet on the floor and lift the hips up. Set the block down. Draw the knees in. Maybe you give the backs of the legs, the hamstrings, a little stretch here by reaching the heels away and back down. And then block in the hands, arms go overhead. Feet come to the floor. Good, let's do 2 more of those. So you come up with just the right variation that works for you. Maybe straight arms, straight legs. Maybe straight on the way down and bent on the way up. Last time. Really bring your breath into this next full cycle. And then set your block off to the side. Good, take your feet a little wider than hip distance apart. Open your arms out to the A frame or to the T position. See what works nicely for your shoulders so that they can relax down into the mat. Really let there be easy breezes blowing around the collarbones and between the ribs, across the shoulder blades. And try to maintain that openness in your arms and your shoulders, but just let your pelvis start to turn over to the right. Bring it back to center. You can use the strength of the left leg to lift the pelvis back to center and then over to the left. Good. No, I hope that first time you really didn't disturb the shoulders at all. This next time, if you'd like to go a little bit deeper, you might find that you do disturb the shoulders. And then I'll just invite you to consider where you want to focus the intensity. And encourage you also to consider reducing the intensity as we give our body now just a gentle, rhythmic movement, a couple of open postures to use to integrate some of this energy and awareness that we may have gained in the many others that we did today. And back over to the second side. Back into a neutral position, knees facing upward. And then let's bring the hands right down beside the hips. I like to ball my fingers into fists and give a little support to the outside of the thigh bone for the bound angle pose. So for this one, we open the knees wide and we bring the soles of the feet together. And the idea isn't to overly stretch the inner thighs or groins, but rather just to open up. So for some of us, depending on the way that our hips are structured, the knees might open quite wide away from the midline. For others, they might be still quite upward facing. And again, here you could add a little bounce or wiggle if you find that there's some extra energy that might need somewhere to go. Let's start to bring the knees back together. Good, cross one leg over the other. Pick up the feet. Reach around for the foot that's harder to grab. And don't actually even bother to grab for that foot or ankle. Maybe just right underneath the knee of that far away foot. And just give a little hug. Give a full breath. And then change the cross of the legs so the other thigh is on top. The other foot's farther away. And just grab onto that shin right below the knee. Give a little hug. Then release the cross of the legs. Give the legs a good kick. Maybe a couple times circle the ankles around or stretch the feet. This is one of the best things you can do at the end of the day for your circulation, for the joints in your legs and your feet, is just to let them be free, release them from the weight that they've been carrying through the day. And you might find that this position is one that is quite restful, and you're welcome to either rest your legs against the wall, or if you do have the chair available, to rest the backs of your legs against the seat of the chair. Good. Otherwise, you can bring your feet to the floor and either keep the feet wide and the knees together. That might be a welcome release for your back if it felt overactivated at all with the movements we did today. Or if your back is content with your legs stretched out long, you can stretch them out one at a time and relax. Once you position yourself in what you hope what you think will be a relaxing position. I'd encourage you to listen to what your body says. And if you're a little cool, cover up. If you're a little warm, unzip. Give yourself a chance to adjust. You may find that your breath quite voluntarily comes back to the surface. Maybe it's the sound of it again. Maybe it's the feel in the rib cage or in the belly. And I'd like to offer you this afternoon the opportunity for the breath to even be very quiet. So if you had amplified it earlier, you might let it now be just very quiet and soft. So as not to disturb the relative peace, equanimity, contentment, maybe. That you can enjoy here after the efforts of the practice. Let it be easy. And thank you, all of the forces, all of your ancestors, all of the elements that made it possible for you to be here. on behalf of all beings who benefit from your persistence, from your effort, from your flexibility, your creativity, your patience, and your presence. Thank you for your practice. Namaste.